So, I mean, I think, for me as an organizational psychologist, hearing that reaction, honestly, like, thank you for that, because I feel like I've been in crazy town for the last year with this stuff kind of becoming more and more and more popular. And in the HR space, it didn't really start gaining traction until the Black Lives Matter stuff, Black Lives Matter's protests started rising. And then all of a sudden it exploded everywhere. And it was the only thing that organizations were investing in was this anti-racist training for their teams. Now, I've been well, let's just say a little pissed at this development, because for me, like, I've spent my whole career working with teams to help build more collaborative teams, more cohesive teams. And I look at some of the materials that you found and I say, this is a recipe for interpersonal nonsense, for really piss poor team relations, because everything gets boiled down to the color of someone's skin. And they're using that as a mechanism to explain every single behavior pattern when it usually has nothing to do with race when we actually look at it on a psychological level. So, I mean, were you surprised at the response that your tweets about these things got? Because they were pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, I really was. I got the first kind of trove of documents and I said, oh, I'm kind of tired. I don't want to turn this into an article for City Journal. I got a bunch of other stuff. So I'll just kind of tweet it out and just throw up a quick thread about it. And then it's like, boom, just explodes everywhere. It's on the front page of foxnews.com. I'm getting, TV and radio interviews everywhere. And I think I was really surprised. Honestly, a lot of the stuff that you find that's the best is you kind of back into it by accident. It blows up by surprise. And then you realize you want to kind of like ride that wave and see where it goes, kind of follow your intuition and your opportunities and what people are responding to. So I was surprised. And I guess it's because of this. It's, having lived in Seattle, lived in Berkeley, California, and Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., for me, it's almost like this is the air you breathe. So for me, it wasn't really that surprising in some regards. I think it was particularly egregious, but it's really kind of standard, progressive academic theory, social justice ideology that's translated into kind of HR documents. And I guess because I'm so immersed in it on a daily basis, just by virtue of where I live and what I study, I was surprised at the reaction. But then kind of the shock of recognition was that, oh yeah, this stuff is so pervasive that it almost desensitizes you. It almost habituates you. It almost makes you feel like, because it is, a lie told often enough that it becomes kind of the truth in a really kind of Orwellian manner. It was almost a shock of recognition. Like, wait a minute. Yeah, this actually stuff, it is bad. It is wrong. It is crazy. But I think we've been just hammered in the last 5 years by so much media that repeats the slogans: white fragility, white supremacy, blackness, whiteness, all of the kind of slogans that have really been repeated so much in the discourse, starting at the elite institutions like the New York Times, and then working their way down to kind of small town bureaucracies. You become numbed to it. And I think that's really, for the large extent, the success. I think it's very difficult to argue on the merits that this stuff is even intellectually coherent or valuable. But just by virtue of the dominant position of the ideologues in media and in public institutions, they've been able to establish this as a truth. And I think that it's up to people like us, let's say, to actually challenge it on substantive grounds and expose it to a wider audience that can make a judgment that I think is a better reflection of common sense.
Yeah, I mean, I really think based on the executives that I've spoken to throughout the past several months, most of them have no idea what's in this training when they invest to bring it into an organization. They get told by their HR person, this is something we should do. And they say, okay, go do your thing, HR people. I'm not really going to worry about it too much. But very few of them, I think, have any idea what is actually in this training and what their employees are actually going to be asked to do. Yeah. So enlighten us. What are some of the things that people have to do? And And we're focusing in, I just want to put a really fine point on this, on government organizations, which means that taxpayer dollars are going to fund this crazy town training. So what are some of the things people have to do in this training?
Yeah, so the Seattle training is quite interesting. So they, first of all, segregated it on the basis of race. They said these are a training for white employees. And the title of the training was Interrupting Internalized Racial Superiority and Whiteness. So it's all predicated on this idea that City of Seattle white employees can be reduced to the quality of whiteness that is kind of inherent in their being. And it's an obligation upon those employees to interrupt their whiteness, essentially to understand the kind of core flaw that exists within themselves, understand that they have, by virtue of birth, internalized a system of white supremacy. And this training is essentially trying to locate that kind of inner evil and then trying to expose it and interrupt it and convert those employees to the work of anti-racism. So that's like on the first page of the training. That's basically what's communicated. And, you know, it started out pretty simply, according to some folks who have gone through the training. You're supposed to essentially stand up. You're saying, you know, my name is Karen, I'm white, or my name is Johnny, I'm white. My pronouns are he and him. And you know, I'm really looking forward to this because I really want to understand how my whiteness actively harms other people. So you're expected to kind of confess your sins, really at the outset, to kind of embrace the racial identity and racial categorization that they've established. And then it takes you through a series of kind of thought exercises where you're supposed to kind of imagine yourself as a white person and understand how all of the kind of values and habits and associations that you have internally are really vestiges of white supremacy. So things like objectivity is a white supremacist value. Individualization is a white supremacist value. Comfort and the need for comfort is really just white supremacy is expressing itself. And then intellectualization is also a kind of value of whiteness, and so on and so on. So you're supposed to break down all of those, I think, are really like Enlightenment values. And you're supposed to basically say those are Enlightenment values that are actually an illusion. They're cover for oppression. Then you have to kind of outline how you personally have harmed people of color, how you've harmed other people at work, which is kind of the bargain that they make, where it's like cult programming, where you say you have to admit to a specific transgression, and now we retain that and we can use it against you unless you kind of cooperate with this ongoing program. And then you have to study the kind of principles of anti-racism. So basically saying if everyone is racist, every white person is racist. So in order to kind of rectify this, you must sign up for this political program. And then they actually have people really kind of pledge loyalty to this new ideological program of kind of quote unquote anti-racism. And it's degrading, it's humiliating, it plays into like horrible racial stereotypes. It's really no better than the kind of racial stereotyping and essentialism and pseudoscience of the 1920s. It uses some of those same tropes, but then tries to essentially flip the power hierarchy. So it really is, in the words of a great colleague, James Lindsay, cult programming. I mean, there's really no other way to think about it except for kind of induction in a cult, exploitation of psychological vulnerabilities, and then kind of recruitment into this never-ending campaign of kind of waves of guilt, followed by waves of kind of ideologically supported action.
Absolutely. And Christine sent in the perfect super chats. She says, 2 more wine to numb the pain from all the stupid. Thank you, Christine. I will use that super chat well. And I just want to say, folks, Chris only has an hour to be with us today. So if you have a question for him, make sure you get it in early, and I will do my best to make sure all the questions are answered. So, Chris, another aspect of white supremacy at work that you left out is schedules and being on time. And so by virtue of being on time for our live chat today, you are a white supremacist. So yeah, I mean, it really is crazy. I think that on time, it's the same thing as, math. The whole debate that's been happening about does 2 + 2 = 4 or 5, is being on time just racism? I mean, it really, I think
the deeper goal of this, and I don't think this is the conscious goal of the people who are administering these trainings, but the kind of theoretical goal that underpins all of this stuff is that they really want to essentially smash anything that is associated with tradition, anything that is associated with the Enlightenment, anything that is associated with kind of productive corporate capitalist behavior. So, being on time is a kind of, in their discourse, would be a kind of a vestige of the white Protestant work ethic that is really dehumanizes other traditions where that have a different kind of cultural conception of time. But the problem is really simple, right? It's like, well, if no one has to be on time, if you're running an engineering firm and you can't agree that 2 + 2 = 4, and any kind of individual merit or effort is really something that shouldn't be rewarded, how do you build or create anything? I mean, how do you, and in government, it's particularly important because if the city of Seattle, for example, has to deliver electricity, deliver clean water, keep the roads paved, you really want a workforce that shows up on time, works hard, and subscribes to basic kind of conceptions of math and engineering. But there's this two-step dance where, on the one hand, everyone knows that. And if you're building a road or managing the water supply for the city of Seattle, you're going to do that anyways. But on the other hand, you have this kind of abstract ideological force that is trying to basically question and disrupt and destroy all of those assumptions. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn between being horrified and thinking that this is something that is deeply destructive and has the potential to be I don't want to say problematic, very create negative consequences for society. And then the other part of me is saying, this stuff is so ridiculous that it's going to be a kind of passing fad or a panic. But I think people will come to their senses. And I don't know. I oscillate on a daily basis. I'm not sure which one is more kind of consonant with the truth.